Deadline day at the Emirates is rarely calm, but this summer the storm has been concentrated, bright and potentially game-changing. Arsenal have not been timid in the market, and their squad has been reshaped in a way that forces a very public question. Did they strengthen to win now, or did they create a financial squeeze that will bother them all season? The new arrivals, a headline striker whose size and temperament changes the way Arsenal will attack, midfield reinforcements meant to shore up balance, and wide options designed to add unpredictability, make the club feel like it has finally answered the gap that's haunted them over 3 consecutive near misses. Yet beneath the celebratory photos and the calming quotes from the manager is a very different, grittier drama. The club is racing the clock to register players and balance books, and the rumour mill has centred on one concrete figure, a roughly €7 swing, a loan fee, a guarantee. A negotiation line that suddenly separates a squad that looks title-ready from one that looks like a team still being patched together. That number, small in the context of Premier League budgets, but huge when placed against registration windows and squad quotas, has become shorthand. It's a lifeline for some and a short-term fix for others, and the distinction is essential because decisions made this week will echo across the season. From a tactical perspective, the signing of a true centre-forward rewrites everything. For years, Arsenal's front line, brilliant and creative, lacked the kind of out-and-out no-no-no, 9 who both drags defenders and finishes with ruthlessness. The arrival of this striker gives Mikel Arteta options he hasn't had. You can now start games with a direct outlet for transition, you can rotate with pace on the flanks, and you have a focal point for set pieces. But that substitutional logic comes with its own costs. When you bring in a heavy investment up front, wages and squad spots are finite. That's where the talk of outgoings, the veteran left-back linked with a move to Turkey, fringe midfielders and wingers who have been told their futures lie elsewhere, becomes critical. The club must decide if keeping a liked, experienced squad member is worth the wage load, or whether selling him now for a relatively modest fee will allow the registration of another forward or the balancing of financial reports in a way that keeps them under whatever constraints their hierarchy prefers to live by. These sorts of micro-decisions are not merely accounting, they erode or reinforce the tactical identity the manager is trying to build. Meanwhile, one of the thorniest subplots in North London is Eberechi. This is not a nebulous rumour, it's a real transfer chess piece with a release clause that has been the subject of breathless coverage for months, and in the final days of the window, the odds and preferences have shifted in ways that will matter for Arsenal's attacking options. Ez is a player who can play centrally or drift wide, someone who brings unpredictable dribbling and a high ceiling of match-breaking ability. For Arsenal, signing him would have been an insurance policy against the moments when the team needs creativity off the cuff. For the player, the decision is about minutes and career arc in a World Cup build-up year. Tottenham's late interest has complicated that narrative, and talk of clubs on the other side of the city moving aggressively has raised the pressure for transfer executives at the Emirates. If Arsenal fail to land Ez, it doesn't mean they haven't strengthened, but it does change the balance. The club will have a more traditional front line and fewer guile options in the final third, which influences substitutions, match plans and the ways in which the manager mitigates fatigue across a long season. The veteran left-back situation acts as the foil to those attacking plans. He's an experienced professional, respected in the dressing room, someone who has been a consistent contributor, but football is merciless with redundancy. When a club signs new fullbacks, when a system evolves, even a once untouchable player can become peripheral. A reported interest from Fenerbahce, the kind of offer that is neither headline-shattering nor trivial, has become the mechanism by which Arsenal could free wages and a roster slot. Some voices inside and outside the club call it a lifeline, a modest amount of money and the disappearance of a big wage off the books that all of a sudden allows more freedom to register a new face and comply with whatever registration window logistics exist. Others call it a short-term fix, arguing that offloading an experienced integrative leader in the dressing room for a small fee passes the responsibility to the manager and risks instability at a moment when cohesion is most valuable. Which interpretation is correct will depend on what the club does next. Whether they use the breathing room to buy long-term value or whether they simply paper over an accounting gap and remain vulnerable later in the window. That psychological tension is visible in the manager's public comments and in the anecdotes leaking from training ground days. Arteta's language has been measured and aspirational. In public, he speaks of readiness and of the team's hunger for silverware, projecting calm. Behind closed doors, there is undoubtedly a surgical conversation about balance, which players must stay to preserve the system, which ones can leave to pay for immediate reinforcements, and where the club places its emphasis between domestic dominance and the long arc of sustainable club building. For the fans, this is an emotional time. Some praise the club for finally spending to finish a job. Others worry that the board's short-term machinations could rob the team of the glue that made them competitive in the first place. Social feeds are a carnival of hot takes and memes, some celebrating the audacity of the striker signing, others compiling a remember when reels of players who were sold hastily and whose replacements did not pan out. That dichotomy is ultimately music to the ears of broadcasters and pundits, but for those who follow Arsenal nightly, it's pure anxiety. Transfer fees, amortization, wages, sell-on clauses, and release clause expiry dates all conspire to create windows where clubs act with unusual haste. A release clause tied to a specific date is effectively a ticking bomb that forces one of two outcomes: immediate action or long negotiations which risk losing a preferred price. That mechanism has propelled the easy storyline to the top of the agenda. As his clause time approached, clubs recalculated and shifted strategy. Meanwhile, the reported bid for the veteran left-back from outside England offers Arsenal a chance, small but consequential, to rebalance books, and rumours of add-ons and loan guarantees in the region of Euro 7am or similar guarantees have made their way into analysis because they are the sort of bridging finance that can make a registration viable within the chaotic arithmetic of squad lists. To the untrained eye, these sums look like rounding errors compared to modern mega deals, but within a club's internal cash flow and within the constraints of short-term squad registration, they act like the fulcrum on which a season balances. On the pitch, the immediate effects are clearer. If Gyökeres, or whichever striker is being used as shorthand for the new No.9, is fit to start, Arsenal's tempo and structure change. The team can play with more verticality, use crosses differently, and occupy a defence in ways that create space for wingers and for the creative No.10. If, on the other hand, the club loses a key piece like Zinchenko, a left-back whose passing range and tempo set the rhythm of many build-ups, the team will need to reroute its play style or accept a different midfield balance altogether. The difference between playing out from the left with a ball-playing fullback and resorting to quicker, more direct options is huge, and it is precisely the kind of decision that determines whether a team can dominate possession against elite opposition or will need to rely on counter-attacks and set pieces. There is also a strategic cascade effect across the league. Tottenham's interest in easy if consummated doesn't just improve Spurs, it complicates Arsenal's North London rivalry and alters the balance of local markets for creative midfielders. If Arsenal completes more sale-based business, those funds could be reallocated to bring in a different profile of player or to improve the club's backroom structures, which would speak to long-term thinking. Conversely, if they merely shuffle fringe players and call it business, the club risks being outspent in subsequent windows by rivals whose owners have different horizons or deeper pockets. The question becomes whether Arsenal's executives view this summer as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to push for a title now, or as a more conservative cycle where every purchase must be justified both on the pitch and in accounting reports. For the players themselves, the human element is significant. The veteran left-back being linked to a Turkish move must make a practical life decision: remain part of a club with bright prospects but reduced playing time, or move to a place where he is wanted and can play regularly. Younger players hovering on the periphery must do the same. Accept fewer minutes in a stronger squad or move for consistent exposure. Easy choice similarly is about minutes and platform ahead of international tournaments and the World Cup cycle. These are human narratives with huge public interest. They are why football is more than numbers. It is careers, identities, and the emotional matrix that binds players and supporters. As the clock winds down, fans will watch the tiniest movements. Who appears at the training ground? Who is missing from squad photos? Which agent tweets are timed to unsettle rivals? The transfer window behaves like theatre in its final act. Small gestures become signals. In those final 72 hours, every transfer executive becomes a poker player, every journalist an analyst of micro-signals, and every supporter a judge with no way of seeing players' training form or medical screens. That opacity is both intoxicating and maddening. For Arsenal, the decisions made in this tiny window will either give them a roster capable of sustaining a title challenge across the long season, depth for rotation, a striker to finish chances, and perhaps the creative polymath they missed, or they will leave them with the optics of ambition and the reality of gaps that opponents will exploit in November and March alike. This is why the phrase Euro 7 Lifeline or short-term fix matters beyond clickbait. It encapsulates the eerie confluence of finance, regulation, tactical necessity, and raw human choice that defines modern football. If Arsenal can convert the short-term cash and registration gymnastics into long-term stability, if inscriptions in contracts, clever loan deals, and the right reinforcements arrive, then this summer will be remembered as the moment the club finally closed the gap and prioritised winning. If the club simply patched holes and moved on, November will bring the same old questions about depth when injuries accumulate, rotation fails, and the point totals fall short. For now, the door is still open. The manager will give measured quotes, the board will juggle spreadsheets behind closed doors, and fans will consume every minute of speculation like it was oxygen. In the stadium and on social platforms, reaction will be immediate and visceral. Some will cheer the audacity and the sheer willingness to spend and push, while others will measure every outgoing name as a potential loss of soul. The truth, as ever, will be on the pitch. The first few weeks of the season will provide a clear answer. Will the striker hit the ground running? Will replacements step into leadership roles? Will the creative gap be patched if ease does not arrive? Will the veteran left-back prosper abroad and be replaced seamlessly? Those answers will determine whether the moves this week were a lifeline for a genuine title push or merely a short-term bandage. So as the final hours of the window hurtle toward us, watch the fine print, listen for sensational one-line releases, and keep a keen eye on who is photographed in training kits and who is not. Those small absences, those sudden appearances on social timelines, are the clues. Arsenal have given themselves options and created questions in equal measure. If they use this moment to create a stable, well-balanced squad with tactical versatility and cover in all positions, then the Euro 7 figure will be a footnote on a successful season. If not, it will be the sum that marked a missed chance, a slender lifeline that never turned into lasting security. Either way, the drama is real, the stakes are high, and every Arsenal fan should be glued to the updates. This is Transfer Roulette with a city's pride and a club's future on the spin.